So we're going to recap on some of the key themes from the series, and in particular session 1. So I know that some of you on the session today probably weren't able to get to that live masterclass, but like I say, don't worry too much. This will stand alone on its own, and I hope you still get lots from it today. So we're going to look at an example of implementing objectives and KPIs into Mesma, and have a look at how that connects to the rest of the software platform, and that will all become clear as we're working our way through it. At the end of the session today, we're going to talk about some ways in which you can start exploring Mesma a little bit further. We've got an introduction to a new offer that we're providing, so that's a bit of an exclusive for people on the session for today. And there's something for everybody, because I know that there are people on here who are current Mesma users, so don't worry too much if you're already using Mesma. There's something that we can talk about on the session this afternoon that will be relevant to everybody. It's Q&A at the end, but feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat. For those of you that were on the masterclass, the chat was absolutely buzzing. There's a few of us on this session today, not quite as many as there was on that. So, but we'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you're from. If you couldn't make the masterclass, if you're already using Mesma or not, let us know. So, okay. So for those of you who have been on the masterclass, the aims of these demos are looking at the Mesma software system in terms of the actual implementation of some of the principles and the practices that we covered in the session. That we kept them deliberately separate. The reason why we did that was because we only had an hour to cover the content, so Lou took everybody through that within that full hour. We're very conscious that people give up their time to come along and learn and explore key themes and different concepts with us, and we've been on lots of those sessions where people almost get lured into a false sense of false pretenses, and because we wanted to just avoid that kind of approach, we wanted to give you all of the content, and then if you're interested in seeing the software application of those concepts, then come along to one of these sessions quite separately. We know that some of you might be already using Mesma as a starter client, so already using our free package, already using it from an SDS point of view, perhaps using Cognisys, perhaps you're a full client of Mesma on one of the packages. So some of this might be a little bit high level for you, but we wanted to make sure that there was a relevant level of content for everybody to understand what the software is doing and how it can be practically applied at quite a high level. And then obviously look at where to go next, including offer and support. So the aims of the actual masterclasses themselves were an opportunity to reflect on the impact of your existing quality assurance practices, to help you to move the dial on results, to draw attention to research-informed ideas that drive continuous improvement. And the way that we've structured this particular series is in 3 parts. We have those live sessions that have already taken place. We are doing the software demos, as I've mentioned, to complement each one of those. And then we're working in the background on some resources to support you to implement those practices, including the software demo, but also things like guides, clips from the videos, etc. So we'll be releasing those over the next few weeks. The idea being that we go to lots of these sessions, but how can we then use that knowledge and the understanding that we're picking up from webinars and actually using that and applying it in our everyday work? So that's the idea of the masterclasses, is that they're very practical and they help you to implement those ideas back in your own organizations. And there are three themes that we've covered in those. So using key performance indicators as the foundation for quality improvement. So that's about devising and communicating clear KPIs to help us to align our organisational goals with what's happening in the day-to-day operation, and exploring how KPIs can be used. We've touched on that session, and we touched on how regulatory frameworks sit within that space, but also thinking about working beyond those. So we're going to recap on some of those ideas just very quickly today. Session 2 was about delivering an effective quality assurance cycle, and session 3 was about making observations of practice work for you and your team. So they were the three key themes covered in those 3 sessions, and like I say, we will give you resources from them following on today to catch up if you weren't able to get to all 3 of them. But just drop me an email, drop hello@mesma.co.uk an email, let us know if there's anything in particular you want us to pick back up on from those. Now, what we'll start with is a slide from that first session where we were talking about some of the issues that we recognise with KPIs in quality assurance area of business. So what we do at Mesma is we're a specialist in quality assurance and quality improvement. Part of what we do is consultancy, so we spend a lot of time out in the field working with providers, and so we see an awful lot of QA KPI setting. And what we've done is we've got the top 7 things we kind of see when we're out working with our customers, including things like that goal setting can lack ambition and restrict innovation. There's an emphasis on measures rather than objectives. So just looking at those fundamental targets rather than the wider objectives that we're trying to achieve. We see annual retrospective top-down processes. So what we mean by that is the annual SAR process and how that can be a top-down process and not a bottom-up process, which is what we prefer to see when we're doing that work. What Lou mentioned in the session, you might remember, is that tends to be not quite so much anymore. That's getting better, but there's still a little bit of that. That we recognise when we're looking at organisations setting their KPIs. Now, the 3 that I've highlighted are the ones that I'm going to sort of look at in terms of how Mesma can support you with these issues today. So what we often see is that KPIs are not embedded within the quality cycle practices within organisations. There's sometimes a lack of transparency resulting in a lack of commitment towards those objectives or KPIs. And QA is done to rather than done with. So the idea behind the tools within Mesma are that you can tackle some of those problems, some of those issues that we commonly see by approaching the way in which you manage your quality assurance and setting your KPIs and your objectives in a slightly different way, using the tools and the resources on Mesma. Now, Mesma's not going to be able to overcome all of them just by using a software system, but hopefully what we'll be able to show you today is just how having the way in which Mesma is an online platform, it's a single space for quality assurance and quality improvement in lots of organisations, and just how having that collaborative platform is a much better way of managing that than through things like spreadsheets, Teams, shared documents and shared drives. And the last one there is that QA was narrowly defined. Now, I've just taken that slide and just highlighted those as some of the things that we're going to consider in terms of the software. Okay, so next slide. So this is Mesma, the Mesma software package. So what you can see in there is that we've got the core part of Mesma, so quality cycle, so it's got a quality calendar in the software. There's a KPI tool, which is what we're going to look at today, but we're also going to consider it in terms of the other parts of Mesma. There is a library in there for managing your evidence, and there is an improvement planning tool which covers improvement plans and CPD plans. So that's the core part of Mesma. In addition to that, you have Evaluate, which is for self-assessment and deep dive inquiries. And then we have Develop, which is for observations of teaching, learning and assessment. So in a nutshell, that's what Mesma covers. It's a cloud-based platform. It can be accessed from anywhere where you have internet connection. And it's all about giving people a collaborative space to manage quality assurance and quality improvement much easier, with less admin and much more effectively than they would do otherwise. And it comes from having that place of working with lots of organisations, from being already having worked in the sector before. Our founding partners worked in the sector, and they've experienced these issues and they understand what providers are looking for from a quality assurance platform. And the results of that are that we see a reduction in time to complete a self-assessment review. We've got fantastic feedback from our customer support team. So there's a 100% satisfaction score on customer support, and 85% of users report things like that they feel more confident in readiness for inspection. So the results are clear. There's lots of feedback from our customers in terms of what Mesma can offer. And what we want to do today is just touch on some of those practical applications of the software to see how that works in the real world. Okay, so let's switch over to the software platform. So down the left-hand side of the screen, what you can see here are those different areas of Mesma that we touched on. So the quality calendar's here. There's a dashboard for outputs in terms of the data that's as a result of those processes and those practices. We have the space called Evaluate, which is for self-assessment. So that's for self-assessment reports and for deep diving thematic inquiries. Then we have Improve, which covers the quality improvement planning and CPD logs. Develop is for reflective practice, so that could include observations of teaching, learning and assessment, or it could be peer reviews. It's any reflective practice really that we can look at within Develop. Library is the space for managing evidence documents, and admin controls are admin controls. Now I've got full access to all of the systems, so I've got the full menu here, and I've just renamed some of these headings so that it's easy for us to see what they're actually doing as we look at them on the screen. Now, where I've landed is in the objectives and key results part of the system. And what I've done in here is I've shown to you how we can build a set of objectives and a set of key results within here. And I've changed this language. Now, in the Masterclass 1, Louise talks about how objectives and key results are a different approach to KPI setting than the traditional kind of key performance indicators, which is very focused on there being a target and not so much about relating that back to the wider objectives and key results for the entire organisation. Now, one of the things that we noticed in those problem areas was that the KPIs are not necessarily visible to everybody, and they're not necessarily as visibly connected to the other parts of the quality cycle. So what we've done with the with this objectives and key results tool, or the KPI tool, depending upon how you define that within your system, because we can, as I say, change this heading and this language so it reflects your process, is we've got a set of objectives on the left-hand side here, and we've got a set of key results on the right-hand side. And it's really easy for us to build those in here. And it's literally a case of, I'm going to create a new KPI, I'm going to give it a title in here, I'm going to give it, if I could spell, and I'm going to give it a target in here as well and set a date for it. Now, what I've done in this example is I've just, for very simplistic reasons, I've set some key performance indicator titles in here. So what I've done with them is I've also connected them out to the different areas of the quality assurance cycle. So you can see we've got construction apprentices, completion rates, we've got a target for that. We've got apprentice program rating, we've got 2 milestones set within here. And Barbara's saying she's practicing as I'm talking, and it's easy to add them in. It is really easy. It's just literally a case of adding one in. And then what I can do from this is I connect them out to any part of the quality assurance cycle. And I do that just by hitting on connect, and I can see already that in self-assessment, this has been connected to my construction SAR. It's also been connected to my construction apprenticeship quality improvement plan. And you can see that's already been linked in there. And what that means is that when I go into the SAR or the QIP for these particular areas, they'll be visible against the SAR and QIP. So if I go into Improve, what you can see in here is in my construction improvement plan, just to give you an example, at the top of the page, that KPI is easily visible to the full team that are using that quality improvement plan. And the objectives and the tasks underneath here are relating to us achieving the objectives and key results that are set out at the top of the QIP. And if I update this in here, so if I update this key result in here, you can see that we've already made some updates, and I can see that we're working towards that. And all I need to do from here is just update it within this section, update this key result, and it will capture a new update. So I've got that distance travelled. I can see from a team point of view as I'm out using that quality improvement plan, but also from the central quality team or leadership team point of view, I can see progress towards achieving that key performance indicator and that key result. So what Mesma is giving you is the ability to be able to easily link those KPIs and those objectives out into the quality improvement plan. And also, if I go into a self-assessment report, out into the self-assessment report. Now, one of the things that Louise touched on during the session on objectives and key results, or KPIs, is that the ability for providers to be able to go beyond the regulatory framework. So what this does in terms of self-assessment report writing is what Mesma does in terms of self-assessment report writing is it gives you the ability to be able to easily attach your objectives and key results that can then be updated by each one of the teams or departments or against your own self-assessment report overall. But it also has within here the education inspection framework. And if we look at, if I go to this next section, so you can see in here, you can recognise some of the language from the education inspection framework in the self-assessment report. We've also got help and guidance within here. So I've got Ofsted Education Inspection Framework help and guidance, which is providing that minimum standard. So my colleagues can use this to be able to write their self-assessment report. We've also got DFE Accountability Framework in here, which is providing the minimum standard from the DFE Accountability Framework point of view on apprenticeships, if that's what we want to have. So dependent upon how you want to set Mesma up, you can have that combination of different standards. But we've also got our own objectives and key results within the system. So we're able to see our objectives and key results, our own benchmarks, the stretch that we're putting on those targets, our own version of our goals at the top, and they're easily visible to everybody. And because I can see the linked objectives, so the strategic objectives or the quality objective, alongside the actual key result target and the progress towards, it's very, very visible for that team. And it's also very easy for the central team to monitor that from within the KPI tool itself, as I call it, the KPI tool in here. So what we've done in this example is we've identified in self-assessment report, we'd already identified some areas for improvement, some areas of weakness. They fed into the improvement plan. That's fed up into the development of our objectives and key results, which we've then implemented and plugged into the objectives and key results tool. We've connected those out, so we're adding that layer of stretch to the targets in addition to what we've got within the minimum standards and the regulatory frameworks. And so we're adding our ambition within there. We've connected those and we're able to track them from within here. So if I click on connect here, what I'll be able to see is I'll be able to see where that's been connected to, and we'll also be able to see any progress made. I'm going to pick on a different one so the pretty colours come up. Let's see if we've got one here. I think it might be this one. If we've made progress against any of those, you'll be able to see that in there. So have a look on the improvement plan. Have a look on this one. I'm sure I'd done one where I was able to show you where it was. But anyway, you'll be able to see that centrally. So you could then evaluate and monitor progress towards that. The other thing that you're able to do is attach that to not only the improvement plans, but also CPD logs. So one of the KPIs that we've put into here is that that we've got a CPD plan in place and that all the construction teaching team CPD is completed, and it could be an additional set of learning or whatever it was that you wanted to set in terms of that target. Now that could be linked not only to the team level QIP, but also to the individual practitioner QIPs as well. So everybody's taking ownership and sharing within that particular objectives and key results in there for them as well. And it can also be linked to the evidence. So if we've got evidence within the self-assessment report, that could be stored within the library. So it could be in the construction team. They could have their apprentice and learner feedback documents in here. And we can link that evidence as well to the construction SAR, and it can go right down to question level. So if, for example, there's an objective around achievement and progress in here, we've got against the quality of education, one of those questions within the self-assessment report, we're directing the evidence towards that. And as that evidence is updated within the SAR or the QIP, we're able to then update the objectives and key result, and we're closing the circle on that particular objective and key result. So I hope that was a useful introduction to KPIs in Mesma. I'm going to take a pause and see if anyone has any questions. Happy to take questions at the end. Conscious of time, so I'm just going to move back onto my slides for a second. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today was just in terms of a risk-free launch approach to Mesma. So we know that at the moment, perhaps one of the things that we hear a lot about is just people not knowing whether Mesma is the right tool for them. So sometimes they want to just have a little bit of a try of it. So we've introduced a new version of the Mesma starter package. We're calling it the 5.2 starter package. And what that means is that for 2 months, 5 users can get access to the system. Gives you the opportunity to understand how Mesma can bring your quality practices to life, see beyond spreadsheets and shared documents in terms of how to use Mesma, and just gives you the opportunity to test it out and to try building things like build your KPIs in it, have a look at how that links into quality improvement plan, have a look how that looks when you update that process and see what the impact of that is. So it gives you that kind of like risk-free opportunity to try it out before you commit. If you would like to start rolling it out further, or perhaps you're not sure about a 12-month commitment, one of the things that we're also introducing is a quarterly contract option. So at the moment, Mesma contracts are 12 months. We thought that it might be more appealing to some providers, particularly around things like budget commitments coming into the end of this, at the beginning of the next academic year. We thought that one of the things that we might be able to offer is a quarterly contract option for some customers. So if that's something that you're interested in, Evan's on the call with us today. Drop myself or Evan an email or a note in the chat, and we'll get in touch and talk to you about that option. For those of you who are already a Mesma customer, then take note of the improvement partners that we're starting in autumn this year. These are free for all Mesma software clients. They bring organisations together to cover a thematic deep dive inquiry. So the one that we're going to be doing in the autumn this year is on improvement partners, on improvement planning, sorry. It gives you the opportunity to strengthen your culture of quality improvement within your organisation. It gives you the opportunity to work with peers outside your organisation. It's that high challenge, low threat environment that we're really keen to kind of develop in a community of practice with other providers. The way in which they work is you have an initial meeting, which is likely to take place probably end of August, beginning of September, or maybe even a little bit later. We usually have a midpoint review, sometimes 6-8 weeks after that, and then a final review after that. So improvement planning is the theme for autumn. Everybody who's a Mesma customer is welcome to come and join those. We've already had about half a dozen people expressing an interest from the last session, so do come and get involved in that if you're able to. The other thing that we provide for our customers is the Mesmasters series. So if you wanted to take a little bit of a deep dive into any of the elements of Mesma and you're already a Mesma user, then feel free to take advantage of those. We run them roughly every 6 weeks on every one of the different areas of Mesma. So that could be on self-assessment, on evaluate, or deep dives on evaluate. It could be on develop for observation, teaching, learning and assessment. Administrators are well covered on a basic session, but also on an advanced session. And we talk about using the library to manage and store your evidence within there as well.